On this video, I'm going to kind of do an overview of the upper and lower axis, how their basic functionality is, and then sort of get into installing the kit on the lower axis. So here's kind of a mock-up of how the lower axis basically works in a stock manner. It's basically the lead screw is retained by a nut, and then this collar or this handle's pinned. So when you rotate it, the lead screw stays stationary, but it does rotate, and there is a Delrin nut that's captured on this carriage. So this is basically the nut that's threaded through this threaded rod. So as you spin it, this nut will move forward and backwards and carry the carriage with it. Nice thing about the Delrin nuts is they're very tight, so there's very little backlash on them. One of the downsides is that they will wear out. However, if you purchase replacements from Proxxon, these are $4 a piece. So, or you could make them yourself if you really wanted to. But for $4, it's kind of a bargain. So one thing you'll notice is when you take the handle off, that little metal sleeve spacer here basically comes up to the edge there. And since we're adding larger bearings and plates on this side and on this side, this would be tucked in and wouldn't fully support the bearings. So that's what these little printed sleeves are for. So I'm going to go ahead and take this apart, and then we'll go over the assembly of the lower axis. What I'm going to do first is install the two. I'm basically going to assemble the two end plates, the two new end plates. So they're kind of broken up into. This is one end plate. This is another end plate, and the lettering is on the front. And the front is where the stepper is. So let me double check here. Yeah, okay, these are correct. So I've broken these parts out into sort of numerous components. I kind of explained that a little earlier. And they're basically attached with these stainless steel self-tapping fasteners. Probably what I would recommend is once you've got the initial fit down and you're happy with it, is to use a gel type super glue. I actually really like the Gorilla super glue. It's quite strong. In between the surfaces before you do your final screw down. So I'll go ahead and we'll do this one first. So on here, it's pretty simple. Basically, there's two through holes, and they basically go into and then just snug them. Don't over tight them or you might strip it. So you can kind of see now that's a piece, and this actually will just fit in there. So I'm going to do the same with this one. This one's a little different, and then you need to install the stepper first. To basically get access to the screws that will screw it onto the extrusion, there's little holes in the end plates. You basically would go through with a different screwdriver. But so you can see this piece will go on here. It's attached by 3 of these screws on each side. Okay, so now that we have those assembled rudimentarily, this is basically how they go together on the slide. One thing you'll notice is there's these notches, and these notches are where the limit switches will basically rest. you kind of have two options of this. You can either glue them in place, or there are holes. You need to get fairly small tapping screws though to go through those holes, basically drill. You can kind of play around with the adjustments a little bit, as far as if you want it more further back, more closer. If you have it like flush, it's going to be pretty safe. The problem is, you know, these will actuate a few millimeters away from the end stop, which is what I'm going to do just to be safe, but you do lose some travel if you do it like that. There are these holes on the bottom of the mounting plate. I drilled these holes beforehand. What I would suggest doing, you don't need these 4. I went ahead and did 4. 4 is probably overkill, so I'm just kind of recommending these 2 for the time. Basically, you would want to install this plate, screw it in, and then on a drill press, just go through these holes, flip it over, and basically countersink them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this on the slide and assemble it. One thing to be aware of is on the end of these internal pieces, there's a little ridge or catch, and that's basically to go underneath these dust shield covers, so that they'll basically move with them. So you basically want to get under that and then put it in there, and then just tighten it with these screws with the M3 self-tapping. And then once you've secured that and you have those holes drilled, then you can secure the inner block in place with the extra 1.5 inch self-tapping screws. So you can see now this whole block now is sort of quite secure. It's screwed in here, it's a lot thicker, so you're not going to end up crushing. You know, as you tighten the lead screw, you're not going to end up crushing the end plates. I'm going to go ahead and finish installing these. So these recesses are basically designed for 626 bearings. So these basically just pop in place. Make sure they're flush. Do the same thing with this one. So once this is installed, the dust shield's in place. Now we can basically thread our lead screw in place. So just and we need to put our little sleeve on. Now that this is in place, we can put this metal spacer back in. One thing you want to make sure is that your nut, you don't have, it's not cinched up too much. You don't have too much lead screw showing. If you do, then that spacer will end up being pushed out past beyond the bearing, and you don't want the collar to sit on that little spacer. You want it to basically rest on the inner collar of the bearing. And then the last thing to do is to add the Dubro collar. You can kind of see one easy way to sort of put tension on this is, and this is just to do sort of a basic level of tension, as I like to use this little piece from the kit. basically just kind of push down on the hole, push down on the collar, and then tighten it. So that's sort of the initial assembly. Like I said, after I did, after I made sure that the pieces fit fine, I'd probably glue this stuff together. But you can see now by you can't really see it very easily, but if I spin this guy, we'll basically it'll move that axis. Next thing you might do is the shaft couplers basically go in. They attach on the shaft 9 millimeters. So you could basically mark off the shaft 9 millimeters. Probably don't have to be super precise about it, but nine millimeters is actually pretty close. So one thing about these bearings is they're kind of about as large as you can get away with, unless you sunk them in. And the problem is you can't really sink them in because large bearings start to hit these, basically starts to hit the carriage. So I'll go ahead and attach these. So now this is attached. You can kind of see, let's see, I guess you can't really, there's no graduated. You can kind of see the slide move back and forth. So now if you have an MF70 stepper, this, it basically will fit in there and screw in with these 10 millimeter M3s with washers. And you're pretty much ready to go, at least with the lower axis. So I'll go ahead and do the upper axis next.